The tropical zodiac is wrong. Just kidding, this is a myth. And the way the myth typically goes is a little something like this. Because of the precession of the equinox, the zodiac constellations, the sidereal zodiac, is no longer aligned with the tropical western zodiac. And therefore, the tropical western zodiac is no longer applicable, it isn't correct, and all of these forecasts that I've been giving you for all of these years are wrong. This type of misunderstanding shows not only a lack of knowledge about the tropical zodiac, but also that the person who left this comment probably didn't do very much research on the actual tropical zodiac. Typically, these types of comments are left by trolls, but sometimes they're left by well-intentioned lay people who just don't know any better. And so I'm here today to set the record straight and to give you practical, usable information about how to interpret the tropical zodiac signs specifically and why this is different than the sidereal zodiac. If you're sick and tired of wasting time sifting through piles and piles of information and misinformation when it comes to the tropical zodiac and astrology in general, only to feel stuck when you go to put this information into practice to give an interpretation or do a reading, this tutorial is for you. In this video, you'll learn a quick and easy system for understanding the tropical zodiac signs that you can put into practice right away that doesn't require hours and hours of memorizing abstract concepts and astrological significations for all 12 zodiac signs. But before we uncover the truth about the tropical zodiac signs, I have a free gift for you. My Beginner's Astrology Bootcamp is the place to get an even deeper dive into the energy of all of the zodiac signs. We have 22 lessons, and 12 of those are lessons on the zodiac signs. We're also covering the astrological planets, and you're going to get a bonus module on the houses so you can put it all together to start understanding birth charts and interpretations the right way. This is the way to fast track your astrology education for the new year. In addition to the 22 bite-sized, easy to understand, concise lessons that you're going to be receiving over 22 days, you're going to get access for a bonus week so you can watch and rewatch the modules from the bootcamp. You're also going to get access to homework assignments that help you to retain the information and interpret it and put it in practice, quizzes to help test your retention as well, and you're going to get access to an exclusive student community where you can connect with like-minded astrology students just like you and get answers to your astrology questions from me and from our expert astrology teaching assistants from the Cosmic Academy of Astrology. And so if that's something that's interesting to you, definitely check that out at the link in the description below. Our enrollment closes January 1st of 2024. Although if you're watching this next year, we're opening this once a year in January. So, check back if this is a different time period. Okay, so what is the tropical western zodiac and how does it differ from the sidereal zodiac, which is based off of the constellations? So I think the misconception and the confusion stems from the fact that at one point in time, there was overlap between the tropical western zodiac and the zodiacal constellations. That occurred a couple thousand years ago. And during that period, there was this globbing together of the significations of these zodiac constellations and their symbolic significations based on, what they were, be it an animal like a crab or a person like a water bearer. However, the tropical zodiac, the Western zodiac that I use in my videos and that you guys are learning here on my channel, has more to do with the trajectory of the sun across the ecliptic throughout the seasons. It is a seasonal zodiac. And it's based off of the seasons and the changing of the seasons here in the northern hemisphere. For whatever reason, it still seems to work quite well for people who live in the southern hemisphere, but it was developed here in the north. And so this is based on the northern seasonal cycles. It's based on the markings of the solstices and the equinoxes that really sets up the framework for the tropical western zodiac. And so the different qualities of these different seasonal markers and time frames throughout the year, from our perspective down here on planet Earth, that is what the tropical zodiac is all about. However, there are some overlaps between the tropical zodiac significations and the sidereal zodiac. But again, This is primarily because they used to overlap, and during that extended period of time, a lot of these significations got meshed together in ways that sometimes work really well and sometimes don't. There's a way to understand the zodiac that does not require you to memorize all of this abstract symbolism, and it's actually better to understand the tropical zodiac based on these different qualities of the zodiac signs that I'm going to be describing to you today. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. A proper understanding of the Western tropical zodiac depends very heavily on understanding all of the different components that I'm going to be teaching you for the remainder of this video. And this is the framework for what I teach, again, in that free astrology course, the Beginner's Astrology Bootcamp, which is open for registration down in the description below. And so in this video, we're going to be covering the gender or polarity of each of the zodiac signs first. So whether the sign is masculine or feminine, which doesn't mean exactly what you probably think it is offhand, so just give me a minute for that. From there, we're going to cover the elements. So we're going to cover earth, air, fire, and water, and what that means when it comes to imbuing significations to the zodiac signs, because all of these qualities we're going to be discussing, all of these components we're going to be discussing are what make up the significations of the zodiac signs. From there, we're going to be discussing modality. So whether a sign is cardinal, fixed, or mutable, and what that means for the sign itself and the way the planets operate through the energy or the lens of that zodiac sign. Finally, we're going to be covering the planetary rulers of each of the zodiac signs and how that lends more insight and qualities to the energy of each of the zodiac signs. And so by taking together the polarity or gender, the element, the modality, and the ruling planet that is connected to each zodiac sign, you should be able to give a full interpretation to understand that zodiac sign very deeply and without actually memorizing a bunch of other stuff beyond the elements, quality, gender, and the significations of those ruling planets. And so this is actually how the tropical zodiac works, and it works a lot better when you frame it in this way. And so I'm super excited to deliver this information for you. So let's start with the first thing first. That is gender. Sometimes this is referred to as polarity, but basically what this is looking at is whether or not a sign is masculine in nature or feminine in nature. This isn't referring to biological sex or gender in the kind of more recent common understanding. This is referring to specific qualities that are associated with each of the zodiac signs based on the way that they operate. And again, it's not associated with, gender in terms of being actually male or female. It's more about the way these signs operate. And this is the traditional language used to describe the zodiac signs. And so I'm going to continue to use the traditional language because it's just what's been used traditionally, but I don't want to be misunderstood about what this actually represents. And so the feminine signs are signs that are a little bit more receptive in nature. They're more passive. They're more, connected. They're definitely not as active. The masculine signs are the active principle. They initiate, they do, whereas the feminine signs, they receive, they reciprocate. And so that's the difference between the masculine and feminine energy. All feminine signs are going to be either earth signs or water signs. And all masculine signs are going to be either fire signs or air signs, which leads me into the energy of the elements. And so let's start with earth. The earth signs are feminine, so they are more receptive and reciprocative in their nature. They're not going to be as active. They activate in response to something. And so that energy of earth is probably what you think it is. It's more material. It's more tangible. It's more grounded. It's more practical. It's more systematic in nature. It is a rooted energy that is very much a part of this physical plane and this physical reality. The air signs embody the masculine principle. They are very active and engaging in their nature. They are there to initiate and to do, and they do and act through communication, through thought, through ideas, through connection, right? And so it's a little bit different than that earth energy. It's more ethereal, it's more interpersonal, it's more idea based and less tangible. In fact, it's very intangible in a lot of different ways when you're dealing with an air energy. The fire signs are masculine in a little bit of a different way. These are masculine in a way and active in a way that would be a little bit more stereotypical. They're active very physically. This is about physical action. This is about doing. This is about manipulating the world through your behaviors, through the things that you actively participate in this reality. This is the energy of initiation, forward momentum. This is a very hot energy. This is a very amped up energy. This is a very passionate energy. This is an energy of creating your own reality through action. The water signs are feminine and receptive in a way that's much more obvious than what you see with the earth signs. While the earth signs are very grounded and tangible in nature, the water signs are very intangible. They're very emotion based. It's about our subjective reality and our subjective experience that we have in response to external stimuli. The intuitive nature of the water signs is also very different. This is about feeling and sensing and intuiting and picking up on things. Think about how water is very malleable and very changeable and how it flows and moves with the tides, it moves with the rivers, it moves with whatever it's contained within. That is the receptive nature of the water signs, which again have everything to do with our internal subjective experience and the way that we connect to the intangible components of our reality. It's very creative, it's very flowy, it's very intuitive, and it's very wet. And finally, when it comes to the actual qualities of the zodiac signs, we definitely have to talk about the energy of cardinal, fixed, and mutable, the modalities. This is very heavily connected to the seasons and the changing of the seasons and the different qualities of the different periods throughout each season. And that again is the Northern Hemisphere primarily when we're talking about the seasonal markers and the tropical zodiac, but this really works in the Southern Hemisphere as well if you're looking at modality especially, because it has to do with the beginning, middle, and the end of each season. And so when we start with the cardinal signs, the cardinal energy, this is associated with the onset, the beginning of each season. This is the energy of the solstices and the equinoxes. This is when things initiate. This is a very initiatory, excitable, challenging energy. It can also be an energy that's associated with crisis and dealing with crisis and dealing with newness in a way that's a little bit more upfront in your face, and it can be kind of disruptive sometimes. And so that cardinal energy is about doing and acting, but it's more about that initiatory phase of something. And it's more about facing things head on in a very specific way, depending on the energy of the elements that's combined with that modality. The fixed signs represent the middle of each season. So spring, summer, fall, or winter, when you're in a fixed sign, that is considered to be the middle of the season when the weather stabilizes, which is different than the energy of the cardinal signs, which is where we just went through this phase of transition and we are fully jumping head first into a new season or a new energy. The fixed signs are more about stability and longevity and doing things that are more for the long term. The fixed signs are very tied in with their comfort zones because this is the time period when the weather, the seasons are very unchangeable, they're very stable, things are not all over the place, things are pretty steady, and you get kind of comfortable with being in that energy or being in that weather pattern or whatever it is you want to think about it like. And so the fixed signs are all about stability and setting things up in terms of routine, in terms of keeping things that are really good going and going and going. And so it's a very stable, very grounded energy. The mutable signs represent the end of each season and the transitionary phase between one season and another, where the weather's patterns start to get very unpredictable. One day it's super hot, one day it's super wet, the next day it's very cold, the next day it's dry, 2 days later it's snowing, the next day it's 80 degrees, like that kind of thing, where you're in this middle ground between two seasons and the energy and the weather is all over the place. That's what mutability is all about. It's very changeable, it's very adaptable. It can go one way, it can go another way. It moves and flows with whatever is coming up, and it requires flexibility, it requires adaptability, and it requires change. This is a very flowy, unstable energy with the mutable signs. So moving on, in order to illustrate the planetary rulership for each of the 12 zodiac signs, I'm going to go through the zodiac signs and piece together their significations based on what we've just discussed and their ruling planetary energy. And for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to be sticking with the traditional rulers of each of the zodiac signs. And so by this, I mean the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So the visible planets, as opposed to the modern rulership, which also includes the invisible, newly discovered modern planets, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The reason for this is because this is the traditional way of doing it, and these planetary energies have always been associated with the energy of these zodiac signs, and they give these zodiac signs a lot of their significations. And so this is very different than the way things work when you use the modern planetary rulership. And so starting with Aries. Aries is a cardinal sign. It's a fire sign. It's masculine. So this is going to be one of the most active, initiatory, passionate, headstrong energies of the entire zodiac. This is also a zodiac sign that is ruled by Mars. Mars is our action, our willpower, our motivation. It's very fiery. It's all about doing things. It's all about movement. It's all about momentum. It's all about taking physical action to manipulate our reality. And again, it's that initiatory principle. And so combining these energies can show you a lot about Aries. Moving on to Taurus. Taurus is a fixed earth sign. So fixed energy is very stable, very consistent. It's very much attached to its comfort zones, and that is very much a Taurus thing. Being an earth sign grounds this energy and makes it much more focused on the material, the physical, and the sensory experience, which again is very Taurus. These are both receptive signs, and so Taurus is more in response to things, and especially in response to the tangible, the physical, the concrete reality, the material reality. When we get into the planetary ruler, which is Venus, Venus is all about luxury, pleasure, beauty, joy, and those are key words that are very connected with the sign of Taurus. Moving into Gemini. Gemini is a mutable air sign. So think about air being very intangible, very ungrounded, very much about ideas and communications and connections, which is all very Gemini. And that mutability combined with the air makes it so Gemini is very flexible. It's not wanting to stick with one thing. It wants to constantly change and fluctuate and do things differently and jump from thing to thing to thing, which is very Gemini. Add to the fact that there is a mercurial component because Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and all of a sudden you have this very socially adept, communicative, intelligent, witty, very sly energy of Gemini, because that's the energy of Mercury, where it's very inquisitive, it's very, thoughtful. It's all of those Gemini qualities. And again, that communication aspect of Gemini is in there with the air element and, of course, that mercurial component, which makes this the best sign for communication. Moving on to Cancer. Cancer is a water sign and a cardinal sign. It's initiatory, but it's also very feeling and receptive. This is an energy too where, it faces challenges or initiates or does things in kind of a sideways way or an indirect way. That's because it's receptive in that femininity, in that water element, as opposed to being active. So it's very different than the cardinal energy of Aries, which is in a masculine element, and it's very fiery. It's very much about doing and taking control of things. Cancer has more of that receptivity. Cancer is also, in addition to being a water sign, which is very intuitive, emotional, feeling, compassionate, receptive, it's also ruled by the moon. The moon represents our inner emotional experience. It's the way we feel about things. It's the way we intuit things. It's also our emotional comfort zones, our emotional support systems, and our subjective experience of reality. The moon is very ruled by emotion, and the moon also changes very rapidly through the sky throughout the entire month. It's the most quick moving body in our sky. And from our perspective, it's the most quick moving body in our sky, I should say. And so it's constantly changing phase, it's constantly changing sign. And so that makes this Cancerian energy very driven and ruled by these different changes of emotions, of feelings, of sensations that are controlled and ruled by the moon. Moving on to Leo. Leo is a fire sign, it's a fixed sign, and it's ruled by the sun. And so as a fire sign, it's very action oriented, it's very passionate, it's very out there. And so that's very much a part of that Leo energy. If you add into that fixed energy, they can actually be very tied in with their comfort zones when it comes to their actions. And this tends to be a very nostalgic sign where they tend to think back to the glory days, the good times. They want things to be how they were actively out in the world when things were the best for them. And so that can be a big Leo quality as well. The other thing with Leo is, of course, that it's ruled by the sun. The sun is the center of our solar system. That's where we get this energy of Leo wanting to be the center of attention. Leo also is connected to solar energies through being very heartfelt. The sun rules the heart, right? And the function of the heart. And it's kind of like the central focus of the body in a lot of ways. It has to do with generosity, giving. It has to do with connecting to our passions, connecting to our gifts of the soul and being recognized for that out in the world, that fire energy and that solar energy of being the center of attention or the center of attention or the central focus, and that solar generosity. When we get into Virgo, this is a very different energy. This is a mutable earth sign, which seems contradictory because earth is very grounded, it's very stable, but Virgo, or mutable signs with Virgo, mutable signs are very changeable, they're very adaptable, they're very flexible, and that's where you get this energy of Virgo being very grounded and practical, but constantly changing, perfecting, refining things. They want to make everything better than it was, which is why they get that reputation for being like naggy or critical in a lot of ways, because they're always looking for how they can change things just slightly to make them better physically in response to what they're receiving, in response to what they're seeing, in response to what's actually happening as a result of, this, that, or the other thing. And part of the reason they're so cerebral and always thinking about these things is because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is our mind, it's our brains, it's our intelligence, it's our logical linear thought. And Virgo is very logical, very linear, and they're very much in their heads, which is that quality of Mercury. Moving on to Libra. Libra is a cardinal sign, but it's also a masculine air sign, which is surprising thinking about the significations of Libra. However, Libra, in addition to being a masculine sign, is ruled by Venus. And so in addition to having that active principle, it's also very much associated with reciprocity, with interconnectedness, with maintaining balance and harmony between two or more parties because of that Venusian principle. The reason it functions in this way, in a way that's more communicative and interpersonal, is because of its air sign quality, because air is about connectedness. Air is about ideas. Air is about thoughts and sharing thoughts. Air is about communication and collaboration. And that's very much the nature of Libra. Being a cardinal sign, it is an initiatory energy, and it can be very direct. It can be very demonstrative in the way it wants to go about interfacing or interrelating with other people. It can also very actively play devil's advocate, as Libra is so infamously known for. However, that cardinal energy can be also about tackling things not necessarily head on, but in collaboration with others. This is about doing things, but doing them in consideration for the needs of other people. Thinking about what other people want, need, what their perspective actually looks like before jumping in head first. Because Venus is the ruler of Libra, there is an association with beauty and harmony and tranquility, even like visual beauty and things like that. But it is actually more associated with, having a beautiful voice, singing, reading, beautiful writing, those types of things as well. And so that is Libra. Scorpio is a fixed water sign, which is very interesting. If you've ever met a Scorpio or a Scorpio rising or somebody with a stellium in Scorpio, you know that they can be obsessive and they can really fixate on things. That is that fixed quality. They get emotionally and psychologically attached to things, and they cannot let go. However, because Mars is the traditional ruling planet of Scorpio, they do have the ability to separate themselves. However, with Scorpio, it's very cut and dry. They're either all in and obsessed with it, or they're all out because of that fixed energy, that fixation. They can't just do something halfway. They have to be all the way into it. And Mars rules things like cutting, separation, very literally ending something and segregating yourself from something. It's a malefic energy, technically, traditionally, and it has the ability to cut things off and say no to things. You would think with Mars that this would be more about action and initiation in a more direct way, but because this energy is feminine, because this energy is water, Scorpio tends to have a talent for drawing things in like a magnet, for psychic initiation of things through that fixation, that laser focus, their mental initiation, their mental willpower, or their emotional and psychic willpower, I should say, is really their guiding principle and their biggest talent. With Sagittarius is a mutable fire sign. And so they're all about taking action. They're all about doing. They need to be moving and changing things as a mutable sign. They like to have a lot of different adventures, a lot of different experiences. They like to mix it up, and they like to actually gain knowledge through experience because of that Jupiterian component. And so that's why Sagittarians can be very wise and also very jovial and lighthearted, because it's jovial Jupiter that rules Sagittarius. It brings luck, optimism, good fortune, and that very likable quality that Sagittarians tend to embody. Jupiter also is associated with not just higher learning and mental faculties, but also travel and kind of expanding your horizons through those types of experiences, which is also very Sagittarian. Capricorn, on the other hand, is a cardinal sign, and it is a earth sign. And so it's initiatory, but in a very pragmatic, very calculated, very structured, very rule-driven way. And that's because of its rulership with Saturn. Saturn is the planet of structure and form. It's the planet of, creating something through hard work, through self-discipline, through putting together the right foundations before moving forward. It's about long-term gratification and long-term gains as opposed to short-term, like just getting something exciting in the moment. And this is what actually makes Capricorn kind of cool and collected. And it's a colder energy. It's a less emotional energy because we have that earth, which is very grounded. It's about the tangible. It's about the real. It's about the here and now. You can taste, touch, feel, smell it objectively. And Saturn, which is very much about giving structure and form and what's real, what's realistic. That is the Capricornian way. Moving on to Aquarius. Aquarius is an air sign and it's a fixed sign. And what's interesting about Aquarius is that although they can be a little bit different, a little bit outside of the box with that air energy, they tend to be geniuses when it comes to thinking about things in a different way or in a new way or getting that inspiration. If you want somebody to give you a very unique perspective on something, ask an Aquarius, and that is that air energy of Aquarius. But that fixed energy usually shows up in a way where as soon as somebody who has a lot of Aquarius energy decides something or figures something out or has that inspiration, they have that idea, they stick with it. They are really, really fixed when it comes to their very strange belief systems, their very strange ideas, their very strange ways of thinking. And it's very hard for them to break out of that in order to see things differently unless they do it on their own. They are a very independent sign. And so it's about coming up with things in their own way. They're not going to listen to somebody else's perspective necessarily. They have to figure it out for themselves. It's not going to change their mind, right? Unless they have that experience and they understand it through their own efforts. And that's also part of that Saturnian component. Believe it or not, traditionally, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. And whereas Capricorn is all about, being really responsible and building a really solid foundation and looking at really the past and what's worked previously, that's a part of that Capricornian component as well. Aquarius is about looking to the future and what you can do moving forward and building something through your ideas, that genius energy, that inspiration, looking at things from a fresh perspective or in a new way, and then taking action and building toward that, making rules, regulations, and guideposts for themselves based on that. When it comes to Pisces, Pisces is the most mutable, most watery, most expansive, most interconnected of all the zodiac signs. This is not just because it's the last sign in the zodiac, although there is some symbolism and some, weight to that. This is because it is a water sign, which is very intuitive, very compassionate, very emotionally driven. It's very much about subjective experiences and feelings. It's also a mutable sign, which is very malleable, very changeable. It's kind of all over the place, doing this thing, that thing, the other thing, which makes Pisces very easily able to adapt to any situation, but it also makes them very boundaryless. It's not just because of that mutable energy and that water energy. It's because of that expansive Jupiter rulership. Jupiter is boundaryless. Jupiter is expansion. Jupiter is everything and seeing everything from that bigger, broader perspective and not really looking at the details, not looking at what's rational, not looking at what's logical and linear. And Pisces definitely doesn't look at those things because of all of that water, all of that mutability. It's more about feeling. It's more about imagination. It's more about creativity. It's more about going with the flow. That Pisces energy is beautiful in that way. It's deeply spiritual, it's deeply compassionate, it's deeply interconnected. And that Jupiter energy adds to that spirituality because Jupiter has that association with higher wisdom and religion and spirituality and broadening your perspective beyond the physical and tangible. And it does it in a very unique way in the sign of Pisces. And so this is just a short snippet, a brief synopsis of how all of these different components, all of these different qualities we discussed today work to imbue the 12 zodiac signs with their significations, with their energies. We can definitely dive deeper, and I do dive deeper in the Beginner's Astrology Bootcamp, which again is free. The link is down in the description below. We also cover the planetary energies in a really great detail, and you'll get a free bonus module on the houses. This should definitely be a paid course, you guys. I'm kind of crazy for giving this out for free. Our students get really great results, and this is great not just for beginners, but for seasoned astrology students who want to just get a better foundation or reinforce their foundations when it comes to the planets, signs, and houses, to get a different perspective and to understand things much more deeply. And so again, the link for that is down in the description below. And if you like this video, like it, subscribe, share it with your friends, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.